Okay, so I'm just going to go through now how we rationalize the denominator, and a little note about why we do this. Whenever we have a denominator, that means we are doing something divided by something else. Now, it's really difficult to divide by a rational number. It's really hard because this number often is a decimal, which is infinitely long or goes on, doesn't recur, can recur. There's lots of things going on, okay? So actually, it doesn't recur, sorry. So it's a really difficult number to divide by. If you actually search what root 2 is, it's a really hard number, a really long decimal, and you don't want to be dividing by it. It's much easier to divide by rational numbers. And what I mean by this, it's much easier to divide by 4, it's much easier to divide by 7, it's much easier to divide by 10. Those are the numbers we want to have on as our denominator. Now, the trick is the question can't actually lose value. So it needs to be the same value, it just needs to look differently. Okay, so that's really, really important with this. So if you haven't had a go at them yet and you kind of know what you're doing, then feel free to pause the video and then I'll go through these. And if not, you can just follow along and see if you develop your understanding. Okay, so we're going to have a go at this. Now, key thing is we have to multiply it by something that has a value of 1. Now, timesing something by 1 is pointless because nothing's going to happen, just the number 1. What we're actually going to do is we're going to multiply it by something that could eliminate this. Now, we also know that root 5 times root 5 is just 5 because it's root 25, isn't it? So that's really helpful. If I do root 5 times root 5, I get 5. I want a rational number on the bottom, so 5 would be great. So I'm going to do root 5 over root 5. Sorry, my 5s look like S's. So when we multiply the top, we get 1 root 5. So I'm just going to write root 5. I don't need the 1. On the bottom, I get root 5 times root 5, which is root 25. This is going to equal root 5 over 5. I'm done. Now it's the same value, but I have a rational number on the bottom, which is what the question is asking for. Okay, maybe have a go at the next one. If you followed along for that example and you want to have a go at the other questions, please feel free. I'm just going to go through the answers for the next questions. Okay, so for this one, same method. It's actually same root 5, but we have a slightly different number on the top. So we've got root 5 over root 5. So I'm going to times them together. We get 5 root 5 on the top as our numerator. On the bottom, we get 5. Okay, I'm going to assume that we can do root 5 times root 5 gives us root 25. So we get 5 for that. Now, what's really interesting here is we can actually simplify our values because these are both rational numbers. If it's outside the front of the third, sometimes we can simplify. We cannot simplify this number with this number because they either both have to be regular numbers or they have to both be surds. They can't be a mixture of the two. So this is going to equal, these two actually become 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. We don't need to write the 1, so it's root 5. Okay, let's have a look at the next one here. So this one here, we're going to times by root 2 over root 2. It's always linked with the bottom. The numerator just kind of goes with the flow. It's always the denominator we're looking at changing. Now here, we've got to be careful because we've got to do 2 times root 2 and also root 2 times root 2. So let's go through the steps here. We're going to get 2 root 2 plus 2 because root 2 times root 2 is just 2. Divided by root 2 times root 2 on the bottom is going to give us 2. Now, we're nearly done. One thing that's interesting here, though, is let's think about what we did in the last one. Get a different colour. This 2 is at the front, this 2 and this 2. So everything has to have something in common. It can't just be 2 things. It needs to be everything. So we can actually do 2 divided by 2 divided by 2. That becomes 1. Okay, so everything becomes 1. Our final answer is going to be 1 root 2 plus 1 over 1. Now be mindful, we do not need the 1 on the bottom, so we are done. That's our question here. Now, I'm going to go through the next one here. So we're going to times it by root 6 over root 6. This is going to become 2 root 6 over 6, because root 6 times root 6 is just 6. And then here we can cancel these two values, so root 2 and root 6 are both divisible by 2. So we get 1 root 6 over 3. We have divided both of those terms by 2 because that's the highest common factor. So we've simplified it. We don't need a 1 on the top. It's technically correct still. Okay, the next one here, we're going to times it by root 5 over root 5. So I'm actually just going to bring this down so I have a bit of space. So we're going to do 3 times root 5 and root 3 times root 5. So 3 root 5 plus root 15, because I've got 3 times root 5 and root 3 times root 5. And as the denominator, I'm going to have just 5. Then we check. Interesting, nothing simplifies. We are done because there's no value here. Root 15 does not simplify, and we have the 3 and the 5, nothing in common. So that is it. Final answer we're going to have here is we have to times this one by root 10 over root 10. We get 3 root 10 over 10, and we check, does it simplify? Nope. So we are done. Please check through the answers on here, and I really hope this helps.